And we are here on progressive behavior. Today we're going to continue chatting, and my friend Michael, and who is also our contributor, he is going to be talking about. Can you please remind me again what the topic was?
Yeah, content to context learning.
Okay, wonderful. So you've mentioned to me briefly what it was. It's extremely interesting. And I want you to just go ahead and explain the audience, kind of in short, what basically it is and why it is so important to know.
Okay, so briefly, what content to context threading is you have two layers. So you have your context layer, so your contextual layer. That could be your personal context, so maybe you have values that you subscribe to, such as integrity or empathy. Maybe you think it's important to be a kind person or to be able to share or to help others when they're in need. Whatever it is that you think you value, whatever life lessons you've learned, you have your context. And then throughout life, you're going to have a bunch of experiences, which are pieces of content. And the goal of content to context threading is to evaluate the specific experience that you're having, the piece of content, but do so with respect to your overall context. So let's say you say that you want to be someone who is considerate and helps others, and you see that there's an old lady trying to cross the road, and you have a free minute, and you look at your context and say, what would I do according to these principles, according to what I'm subscribed to? And probably you'll come to the conclusion that in that piece of content, in that situation, you would help the person across the street because that's what you would view as the right thing to do. What happens a lot of the time with people is they're in the moment, in that piece of content, and they're not reflecting or thinking about their content. So they just say, well, I don't feel like doing that. They might not even think about it at all that they could go and help the person. It might never cross their mind. But if you're looking at your experiences and your situations through the lens of, okay, well, what is my overall context? And let that help you make your decisions and give you insights into what's going on, then you'll be able to see that person, recognize the opportunity to help, and act on it. So behave in a manner that's in accordance with your context.
Mm-hmm.
So the really important thing is that when you analyze a situation on the contextual layer, you're avoiding your personal biases in the sense that maybe you're feeling lethargic, or maybe there's something else you really wanted to do, or you just don't feel like walking across the street with that lady, whatever the case may be. You're going to be able to still reach the correct conclusion because you'll say, well, what should someone do in this circumstance? So you take yourself out of it for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And just say, well, if you're valuing being a kind person and you're valuing helping others, and you do happen to have enough time to help someone, then and the means to do it, then go and help them. And boom, now the decision's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you're stuck in that, if you just analyze everything from the specific piece of content, your bias can kick in at any moment, and you might not help the lady across the street. You might find 100 different reasons why not to that aren't actual reasons in accordance with what you claim to believe in, but they're just reasons in the moment, sort of like a defense mechanism, and your behavior is going to, I would say, suffer because of it. You won't make the best decisions that you could. So that's sort of the general idea of content to context threading, where you're basically connecting your experiences back to your overarching context. So the major benefit, again, is just that it's an excellent way to alleviate the damage that personal bias can cause. Your personal biases in life can cause you to become defensive. They can cause you to make decisions that don't actually help you, or decisions that really you're saying one thing, but now you're doing a completely other thing. So there can be a disconnect. So what you want to do is, instead of have a disconnect, you want to have the connection between your context and your content. So that's kind of the general idea. And for me, I found a tremendous amount of value in trying to pull myself out of a situation, look at it in terms of what are the various principles that make sense, and figure out, okay, well, like, what advice would I give someone else in that case? So that way my personal bias is less of a factor. and you can start to make better decisions. That's a general idea.
That is very interesting. I definitely understand. So, because of the fact, I mean, it's a fact that humans engage in this. This is what happens to people when they, make decisions. And this is why we see people say one thing but do another thing. And this is why we see ourselves think, well, I'm a good person. But when opportunity comes to help, we'll find millions of reasons why not. Maybe it was too dangerous, or I'm running late, or whatever. I mean, this is why we choose not to speak up. This is why we choose not to stand up when clearly the moment calls for somebody to, say something about the current situation and environment. And it helps explain kind of how the thought process of just an average human being, including myself, works when you are faced with some kind of a situation in your life where you are challenged, whether you are going to do something or you're going to walk away and make a different decision, and tell yourself an excuse in your mind. So that's really cool. Have you ever thought of kind of putting this in a little course online and selling it as a course online? It's a very, very interesting topic.
That's an interesting idea. I don't know if
because I already do online courses, so as soon as I'm like, that's very interesting. I can definitely turn that into a course. You can turn it into a course.
I mean, yeah, there's a whole other aspect of it too that I think is worth mentioning, because the examples you were sort of just bringing up, the way you were applying it, you reminded me of something that actually happened recently. So I have a friend. He will remain nameless for this. No big deal. And he recently had an experience where he got scammed. So he went to another friend's wedding, and he was the best man responsible for the bachelor party and all that. But he wanted to get jet skis. He wanted to rent jet skis for the day. That was his, cool idea. And
which is a cool idea. I mean, that sounds like a fun thing to do for your friend.
The idea itself was pretty good. So, but the problem started to kick in when normally he's very diligent. So if he wants to buy something or take a trip or do anything, he'll read reviews. He'll look up all his different options. Put a lot of time into that. He was kind of in a time crunch in this case. He didn't plan ahead well enough in this case. And as you know, anyone, when we're in a time crunch, we don't get to make the best decision. So we rush.
Most mistakes are made during rush. Yeah.
He sort of just saw the first option and kind of went with it. And it turned out that this option was a group of people that what they do is scam people. They get you to put in a security deposit.
And then disappear.
Either you pay it in cash or you pay it in one of those like Venmo type of services where after a few days that money is gone. Like you can't just get it back. So he did the security deposit. And when the time came to go, to jet ski or whatever,
the people
were ignoring the calls, and then they were saying, "Oh, we're a couple hours late," and then it just never materialized at all. And he was out of his money; they wouldn't return it,
and the party was ruined. Yeah.
Yeah, and keep in mind, he lives he's not from here. He's out of town, so he had flown in. Again, it's a big occasion, it's a wedding, so it's understandable. But it made him so upset. He took it so personally that. And also, I should note that he's a good person in general. So he really does like to help others, and he's a kind person, and he'll put other people before himself oftentimes. So he has a great personality. That's part of why we've remained friends for so long. And this issue, though, of getting scammed, he started to think in his head of all the reasons he should be upset. How can he get back at these people? Can he sue them, or can he get them in trouble with the police, this and that? And he actually even went a step further and tried to call the police because he doesn't want anyone else to get scammed.
Okay.
So that was sort of his mindset. But the problem is that you file a police report in this kind of case, and you would have to show back up for court. Now, he lives in another state. That's not some trivial thing, and we're only talking about like $100, $150 security deposit for some very small-time scam that's going on with jet skis.
Yeah.
And, realistically, the best thing he can do is just leave a negative review and move on with his life.
Yeah.
Like, this is not
a legitimate business,
and all that amount of effort to fly in and all that stuff, it's not worth it. So I had something interesting that I told him, because I was content to context threading the whole time. As I started to do, you start to look very differently at a situation. And what I told him was, look, if your whole psyche is about wanting to help others and you want to prevent people from being scammed, etc., like, you're trying to just do good and be helpful. there's a ton of things you can do where you live. You can volunteer at a homeless shelter. You can do so many other things that don't involve you coming way out of your way, spending a lot of money to travel, taking time off work, going through all this hassle to, be a witness in a court case against some very small jet ski scamming. Again, not that it's good that they're doing this scam. Of course, it should be stopped, and if someone has the ability to help, and it's not too much to ask, then yeah, great, go for it. But in his situation, it's way too much to ask. It's not that realistic. And if his point was that he kept getting back to us, I want to help people. I want to do good things. Like, okay, you can still do that, but the only reason you care so much about this jet ski thing is because you got scammed. So your personal bias is kicking in. You're not looking at your context, which is that you're trying to be a good person and help. You're looking at the piece of content and thinking about all the reasons you should be upset and how badly it affected you and how negative.
And I'll tell you kind of how we as behavior analysts will look at the situation like that. So everything that you've described would happen to a friend, and basically kind of like how I would look at the theory that you just presented, the threading of context and content, is basically I'm looking at your friend, right? This friend, it has a behavioral history. It's not the first time that somebody tried to scam him, and it's not the first time that someone has scammed him. And depending on how the environment was arranged during those experiences in the past, that's what's really shaping your friend's behavior in this situation. So basically what's happening is that either in the past, several scenarios could have led to this sort of a reaction. So basically, it looks to me like he's a type of person who, it's great that he says all these things, he helps people. Obviously, he's proven that to you. You're his friend for all these years. I know you personally. You don't just, become friends with people for no reason. And you definitely, do not stick around and keep people around if they're, in some way not on the same, I guess, worldview with you, or don't have the same at least empathy to the world. I've never seen you hang out with people that I thought were cruel or did something horrible. I know you have a good judge of character. So your friend is basically, because you're welcome. So because of all those experiences, this reaction, the way that he's reacting, has been reinforced in the past. Otherwise, he would have not reacted this way. However he reacts is the way, because he's also not 5 years old. He's probably almost 30, right? Or 20 something. So it's not the first time that this has happened, and his body has learned that when you get scammed, this is the reaction, and it was reinforced. Perhaps there was something that he did like that actually did get the people punished. Maybe he doesn't even remember. Maybe it was in grade school that some kid tried to scam him. You know what I mean? But the body remembers. Your memory, you might not have that recollection, but the body remembers what consequences environment delivers. Because the whole purpose of your body existing is for DNA to interact with environment. That's it. So, but this what you're talking about, the threading of contact and context. Yes, this is basically an intervention that a person can engage in their mind once a certain event occurred, and to make sure that the decisions that they're going to be making and the behaviors they're going to be engaging after this unpleasant experience is going to be most favorable, not just to them, but based to their context, right? To also continue helping and, not to get stuck on this little personal thing. And if you can't resolve it, it doesn't mean you can't help. It just means put all that motivation of helping into something else, into a different topography of behavior. Correct?
Absolutely.
You would agree with that. Okay, cool. So I see how those two contexts are actually aligned, even though behavior analysts would say, oh, we don't believe in, these constructs and it's all about behavior. But I can totally see how what you're talking about is actually you describing a behavioral intervention that a person can use on themselves when they start having these thoughts. And like you said, I was threading, you were actually, implementing a behavior intervention on yourself to help you make better decision. And you're doing it because that behavior has been reinforced in the past. When you tried on that intervention, something better happened and your environment resulted in a reinforcement. And that's why you want to talk about it now. And that's why you want to share it with people now. And that's why I'm here analyzing it.
It's awesome. I'm loving this. This is great.
Yeah.
Personal growth going up the roof right now.
Same here. This is how I grow as well. I'm very stuck in my own scientific limitations of what they kind of consider, explanations for human behavior. And that's why I love talking to different people from different sciences, and just hearing, well, how have you been surviving? Do you think about, empathy, and how should we make decisions and grow and evolve all together? That's what the most important thing to me is. And you're great at it too. I love it. You're a great partner in this.
Yeah, and what you just said, great partner at this. I think that's one of the core, one of the most important elements of this whole sort of system, just as a human being in general, is relationships. So when you say that, great dance partner, so to speak, um, that relationship, the trust that we built, etc., over time, it really makes it easy to open up to somebody like you. And with my friend, he was able to open up to me so easily. We've had so many experiences together. We've had 2 decades of life together, a little more than that, and neither of us has ever abandoned the other's trust or done anything to hurt the other one, and we've always tried to help each other. Um,
And my body
so
remembers. Yes, absolutely.
yeah,
I agree. And that's why we're even able to help each other in personal growth, because we're
yeah.
open to
So
it. It's hard to talk to people and they're just not, they're distracted. They're not interested in the topic. They're on a different plane.
yeah, when that trusting relationship is established, so between me and my friend from this circumstance, between you and I,
Hmm.
it really enables someone to influence you. Like you have the ability to influence me. I'm open to hearing what you have to say. If you have a different perspective, I don't need to feel that I can't, express my own emotions or my own feelings or my own thoughts. I feel like I can be open, and that rather than those being used as sort of a weapon against me or to manipulate me for some ulterior motive, I know you're just trying to help, being a good friend, etc. So that I think allows people to grow. It opens up the door for that, which is I think really just super important. So
That's right. And I also want to tell you that this specific thing that you just pointed out, that this relationship is what helps, help change human minds. This is also the fact that we are so open to being open with people who we have a relationship. This is also what's being exploited right now. And one of the biggest industry who is a professional at doing this is the public relations companies. They are literally think tanks who come up with a way of how to pair a person who's doing horrible things and giving them money with reinforcement, so they can build a virtual relationship with a person. And remember, not everyone is as privileged as you and I. Most of people do not even have good relationships in their lives. I'm not
right,
saying
they have nobody to talk to, no one to
yeah,
get
yeah. I mean,
advice
and even the
from.
people that they live with. I mean, I've worked with people that are under in vulnerable populations and in very poor areas. They do not communicate with each other the same as we do because we're educated. You know what I mean? And that really takes away from our ability to even tell them something, because they have a really closest to, they will have a closer and a deeper relationship with a TV personality, because they see them every day.
And that keeps getting reinforced
Yes,
constantly.
yes. Rather than a therapist who comes for the first time and tries to tell them something completely different, which is what my job was, as a therapist, come into a family and try to help them and, show them that there's a different way of managing a child's behavior. That was my job. And seeing that, oh my God, they have such a, like, almost a religious relationship with the television, almost religious relationship with some of the politicians. They pray for them. So I'm like, wow, this is being exploited. The fact that they know that only by building the relationship will the person listen, they're exploiting it, and they're creating these falsehoods. And that's why they have these charities. Oh, this guy is so nice, he went ahead and donated money. Or, oh, this lady is so nice, she went ahead, I don't know, threw some kind of free lunch for everybody. BS. That you're doing that is to cover up, to make a false relationship with a human being, so then it would be easier to convince them you're not doing horrible things.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, as I've engaged in conversations with strangers, random people, just I try to talk when it makes sense to. And I've noticed that same exact line of defense. So let's say there's a company that's clearly practicing avarice. They're greedy. They're willing to take advantage of their audience, their customer base. They consistently do this. They've made literally billions of dollars,
It's been reinforced, yeah.
and
It's
then
successful.
you'll see someone try to defend this by saying, "Oh, but didn't you see they donated $1 million to a charity?" It's like, okay,
Yeah.
let's again, let's look at the overall
Content
context.
and context.
Like, I get
Precisely.
that
You
that
nail it.
specific content you're going to view as a good thing, and I agree in general that that was probably a good thing, but it
Hmm.
was not done because the overarching context is helpful,
Yeah.
charitable. It's a public relations issue.
Yes.
They're managing perception. They're trying to trick somebody like, no
Hmm.
offense, you, the person I'm talking to. I didn't say this because I
Yeah.
think that would just raise the defense alarms. But in my head, I was at least thinking that like you just got tricked, very clearly. Unfortunately, like that was the whole point. And I've seen as well people try to defend these sort of egregious companies or egregious actions of individuals.
Hmm.
Um, so, like, I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody, I'll give you like a contextual example. Let's say there's an entity, company, individual, whatever, that is intentionally, knowingly, psychologically manipulating people to make them to trigger the instant gratification mindset. So to give that to them, to
Hmm.
force them into that mindset, and they'll do
Yeah.
it from the early age of a child. They'll do it to adults. They'll do it to vulnerable people, so such as like gambling
Yeah.
addicts. They'll take advantage
Yeah.
of
I'm
all these
thinking of
things.
like video game, like where you buy in and opt in and all that stuff. All those are exactly what you're talking about. Little psychological tricks made to get money out of you.
Right. So you're taking advantage. So you have an entity doing these things intentionally designed systematically to take advantage of its entire audience,
Hmm.
basically. And I've had people respond to that criticism. Well, me saying, well, that means the company doesn't have integrity. You know, I
Hmm.
wouldn't want to work for a company like that, or I wouldn't want to associate with an individual like that. Personally, maybe
Hmm.
I'd want to try to help them grow, but I'm not going to. I don't think take too many contextual lessons from them in terms of how I want to approach life. I don't want to be greedy
Hmm.
personally. So I've experienced that a lot. And another common defense aside, so you have the, oh, they donate to charity, or you know, like, oh, this person had to take a higher paying job for a clearly corrupted company or something, or oh, this company itself is clearly corrupted, but it's defended because, oh, but they make so much more money doing this. It's like,
Hmm.
well, that doesn't make sense. And then the charity example of, oh, but look at the things, the good things they're doing. That doesn't make any sense either because it's such a small magnitude of good or such a large magnitude of bad.
Hmm.
So you should quickly, if your point is that they're doing some good, that means you should be putting a scale of good to bad and realize that the bad is outweighing the
Yeah,
good by a
that's right.
lot. So you're actually making an argument against them by saying that. You're saying that they know good from evil and they're choosing to do a ton of evil and a little bit of good.
Hmm.
And then the other thing is, oh, but they're not as bad as somebody who's,
That's right. Not
so
as badass. That's my
not
favorite
good,
one.
they're not as bad as this or that. So that's a logical fallacy, the fallacy of relative privation, which is the not as bad as fallacy.
Hmm.
So I keep seeing that again and again and again, and I'm just thinking like, even when I tell someone like, hey, you just made that's a fallacy. Like I'll list this specific name, explain what it is, and they'll say, oh, I didn't make that fallacy. Like, but here's a specific context of where you made that fallacy. Here's what you said and what you were trying to make.
Hmm.
That's exactly what the fallacy is. That would be a perfect, a prime example of it, actually. And rather than try to do any sort of introspection, it's just, oh no, I didn't make a mistake. You're the illogical one. Like, I wish I was the illogical one, and you were helping me see what I was doing wrong so that I could learn. But
Yeah.
that's not what's happening
Hmm.
here. So I know there is a lot of criticism, so to speak, in what I was just saying, but I think there's a lot to learn from that, to try not to make similar mistakes, try to understand also where people are coming from, and maybe try to figure out ways
Hmm.
how to better influence them. Because pointing out that they made a logical fallacy a lot of the times doesn't help. It's just the defense goes up.
Yeah.
So
And I mean,
it's
the most important part to take away from what we're talking about here is that the smartest, the wealthiest are fully aware that human beings are not able to make decisions without making those huge fallacies, without being directly trained how to evaluate presented information. And if it's not directly
exactly.
trained, and it's not as easy as taking an English course, it's I mean it's a knowledge and a skill that you develop and a skill that evolves with you as you grow, as you become an adult. So when you
Absolutely.
rob the population of that knowledge, they become so easily manipulated because we're told in school, you're a rational human being. You're able to make decisions. Look, isn't a hot thing hot and the cold thing cold? You can make that decision. And then drawing a parallel, that means you can make decisions about everything, which is absolutely not true.
100%.
And I've totally fell for that because I've been told, as a since young age, that I'm smart, that I'm intelligent, I'm able to do anything I put my mind to, yada yada yada, which is absolutely not true. I'm only able to do the things that I'm taught to do. I'm only able to tell what's true or what's not based on what's been taught to me. And if those are not efficient tools to tell the truth from non-truth, I'm not going to be doing it. And that's what's been happening for the last 30 something years.
Absolutely. And we even talked about the reflective judgment model, and basically 7 different stages that you can sort of experience that are natural stages to go through in terms of eventually reaching a point where you are a reflective reasoner, where your ability to process all the information and try to determine truth or what's the best decision to make, how certain can I be of this or that, and what risks am I willing to take, how good of a source of information is this, and is that person being consistent in the way they argue their different points? All that sort of stuff you can use and give you a better sense of what is real, a better sense of what makes the most sense to do, so you become more reasonable. But the very first stage of that is just what you see is what you get, basically. So
Yeah, I get
exactly
it.
what the second stage of that is literally just well now you know also that you can listen to authority figures. So maybe you see something, but if that TV authority figure that you subscribe to for so many hours says something, well, now that's where you're at. And you can slowly start to ascend the ranks, so to speak, in terms of your ability to become more reasonable, to handle more factors as you try to process reality. It's a complicated world we're in. There's a lot of stuff going on, as we've mentioned several times throughout our talks, that there's a lot of factors that are intentionally there to influence you to go in this or that direction, to behave a certain way. And there's oftentimes ulterior motives behind that are not wanting you to learn how to become reasonable or how to learn about logic and take a formal class on that and become educated in that sense. And then you can start to recognize different fallacies, or if this is a valid argument, is it sound, and start to get a better sense of things in that manner. You can be intentionally pushed away from that so that every time someone tries to correct you when they perceive you as wrong, put up a defense mechanism because you don't want to be wrong. Being wrong is bad.
And they taught you that, they taught it and they reinforced and punished. Being wrong is punished, and then being right is reinforced.
Wrong answer.
And that's it. And that's what we have.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in schooling, even as you start to see it, like that's exactly what's happening. First, the child is supposed to be, figuring out how to walk, maybe talk, etc. Then they're supposed to be able to figure out, okay, let me obey the teacher, so to speak. But eventually, you want to keep climbing. And a lot of the times, what happens is, even by the time some people are out of college, they haven't really made it past sort of a quasi-reflective reasoning state where they're sort of doing it, but not really fully. So that becomes a gigantic issue that's hard to overcome. And your whole life, you've had all this reinforcement that makes you defensive because every time you got an answer wrong on a test, that was treated as a negative, down, bad, and that's a horrible way to approach anything in life. You're gonna fail constantly, and the idea is you want to learn from it. It should be a growth promoting experience, not a you should feel bad about this and you suck or you failed kind of experience in that manner. It should be, okay, why did you get this wrong, and how can we learn from it? How do we improve for next time? And sort of go that route. Like I've read something from Buckminster Fuller, who I sent you that one quote that you liked, but he had another. That if he had a classroom and he was teaching people, if someone would get every single answer right, to him that would be like, that should be average. Like, great, you're a good parent. You repeated everything back to me, and didn't necessarily learn anything or or grow from this, but
Yeah.
you're a parrot. You know how
Yeah.
a parrot will just say the words back?
Yeah,
And
you
you say?
consume and regurgitate. That's it. There is no actual
Exactly.
processing happening here.
Right. There was no digestion, etc. You just
No
regurgitated
absorption.
everything. So he
Yeah.
said, okay, fine, that would be average. And then he said the people that he would, think of as the good students or the higher grade, so to speak, would be the ones that made a lot of mistakes, learned from those mistakes, and corrected themselves and adjusted and improved and got better. That's what he would look for. That process of being able to have an experience, look at it as success or failure, evaluate it, reflect on it, learn from it, and then make the adjustments, and then repeat that process, keep growing. So yeah, it's an interesting, totally different way of viewing teaching in a classroom, for instance,
That is
than what
super
we're
cool.